over 55 years, your source for agribusiness news and features from around the Southeast and across the country, focusing on one of the nation's top industries, agriculture. The Farm Monitor is produced by the Georgia Farm Bureau in association with Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College.
All right, the moment of truth, that small 30-minute window we get to spend with you. Jennifer Parson, Ray DeLessio, at your service.
Yes, happy you decided to join us, and hopefully you will be too when you see what we have in this week's show. Coming up, if you haven't noticed, Georgia's citrus industry is growing really fast, but recent storms have producers on alert. Damon Jones gives us a look at how the state is bouncing back for what could be a record-breaking harvest. Also, that dust and distinct smell, yeah, you know it. Those are peanut harvesters hard at work. But for a lot of producers, the season has been a mixed bag. How tough weather and disappointing prices are hitting those wallets and packing quite a punch. And then later, for years, farmers whispered about a growing problem wreaking havoc on cotton fields like never before. Well, now it's official. We'll tell you what's emerged as cotton's #1 economic pest here in Georgia. These stories and so much more right now on the Farm Monitor.
We are now just weeks away from the start of harvest season for one of the fastest growing commodities in Georgia, citrus fruits. And after a smaller crop in 2023, growers are expecting record yields this year. As Damon Jones reports, that could help offset some of the major production losses suffered recently in Florida.
Not even a decade ago, citrus production here in Georgia was almost non-existent. But thanks to a recent boom, there are now more than 500,000 trees planted on nearly 4,000 acres of land within the state. And while some growers were affected by the recent storms, it is still shaping up to be some huge yields.
We're estimating we lost about 5% of our trees statewide, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not as bad as some of the other commodities. But when we look at individual groves, we saw anywhere from 0 to 40% fruit loss, just depending on where in the path of the hurricane they were, what variety it was, and how old those trees were. It's looking very promising. Even though we got hit by Hurricane Helene, it's still looking like this is going to be a record year for citrus.
That is very good news for the industry, as it suffered through 2 straight years of little to no production due to the late freeze in 2022.
So this year especially was a very heavy crop load. So after the freeze in 2022, 2023 was a rebuilding year for a lot of the trees. So we didn't see a big crop last year. So the trees are kind of overcompensating this year. And if you go out and look at trees, most of the limbs are almost laying down. They have so much fruit on them, which is good for this year. But that means in the future, like next year might be a lower year just because they've invested all of their resources into this year.
With that in mind, it's imperative growers are well prepared for the coming harvest and what to do with the crop once it is off the trees.
In the coming months, just keep a very close eye on your crop. With all this cold weather we've been having, you can expect the fruit to start coloring up, and just make sure you've got a good plan in place for where you're going to send the fruit. I've heard some interest in exporting the fruit to Florida, and make sure you've got the right certification so you can actually get them over the state lines.
That's because citrus production in the Sunshine State has fallen more than 90% over the past quarter century due to hurricanes and citrus greening. And while it is a relatively new industry here in the state, Georgia is well positioned to help fill the void.
Well, right now, research is just really getting started. So one of the things we want to focus on is freeze protection methods, because that is one of the things that most threatens the industry here. We don't have the disease pressure that places like Florida do. Right now, the Georgia citrus industry is still pretty small, so you have pockets of citrus, so they're pretty isolated, and that keeps them safe from most of that disease.
That being said, there is still plenty of research to be done in order to maximize yields year in and year out.
A lot of the questions are just cultural management practices, fertilizer questions, when they should be fertilizing, how much. Similarly with canopy management, should they be pruning, when should they be pruning? Also with irrigation, how much water should they be putting out, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. So it's an exciting new area of research for the state.
Reporting from Tifton, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
Damon, thanks so much. In other ag news, with the expiration of the current farm bill having come and gone, many important agriculture programs are on hold, including several trade promotion programs. Economist Betty Resnick with the American Farm Bureau Federation says Title III programs generate outstanding returns for farm bill investments. She adds that Title III programs help promote a wide range of commodities.
These programs benefit all of agriculture. That's one of my favorite parts about them. Over 70 organizations representing different products were awarded grant funding in 2024. This hugely diverse mix ranges from big commodities like corn and soy to smaller ones like hops, ginseng, and cranberries. About 20% of all U.S. ag production is exported overseas, and there's also $2 of domestic economic activity created for every dollar of ag export.
The 2024 peanut harvest is rolling along here in Georgia, but getting to this point hasn't exactly been a smooth ride. Our John Holcomb took a road trip to Donaldsonville and details why things have been very bumpy for producers.
For a farmer, there's nothing quite like seeing the fruits of your labor come to fruition, and farmers here in Georgia are getting to do a lot of that as the 2024 harvest season is in full swing. One farmer who's busy doing that now is Brad Thompson, a peanut producer in Seminole County, who is busy in his fields after a long growing season.
We had a really good harvest season so far. Hopefully in 2 days we'll be through with the peanuts. We've started out and we've got very little rain. Of course we had a threat from a hurricane and we got probably 3 or 4 inches at one time, but that was nothing compared to what we could have got. We were really fortunate, dodged a bullet on that.
However, according to Thompson, despite having good harvest weather, the yields he's getting are disappointing, as he says this past summer's heat must have been too much for the crop, despite most of it being under irrigation.
Our yields is probably off 500 to 700 pounds, and every year it seems like we're dropping 50 pounds, 100 pounds. I would say part of our yields being down, I guess it's everybody's guess because, we've had years that we felt like our yields were going to be off and they were actually up. But this year I feel like it was the heat, the stress on the peanuts, the dry land. It was kind of average crop on dry land, but our irrigated that's where we were so much off, and we're about 98% irrigated.
According to Thompson, what's most disappointing is the fact that this isn't what he or any other producer needs right now, as he says the price for a great crop was already too low.
This was a year that I was really hoping we was going to have an outstanding crop because we really need it. The price of our inputs has gone up. The price of equipment is just through the roof now. What it's costing us an acre to plant a crop, harvest a crop, it's not really looking good on paper, not with the yields that we're receiving. And I really don't know how we're going to continue to go on. But I know a lot of people ask the question, well, the price in the grocery store's up, but our commodities, we're not getting any more for them than we did 30 years ago.
Thompson says that despite the situation producers all over the state and country are in, he hopes to make it through this season, but is afraid that might not be the case for others that have endured many years of hardship and will have no choice but to call it quits.
Last year, I would say there was probably 10 to 15% of people that is not farming this year, that backed out of farming, and I would probably say we're going to be looking at another 15 to 20% that's not going to be farming. Farming in general, it's not about the money, it's about planting a crop, growing a crop, living for the Lord, because really that's what keeps us going. I mean, it's faith that next year's going to be better, that, things are going to get one day where we can relax.
Reporting in Donaldsonville for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
Could deer be Georgia cotton's biggest enemy? New data says absolutely. After the break, we'll share those numbers and talk to UGA cotton agronomist Camp Hand to find out why this is happening and what farmers can do. Stay tuned.
I'm Tom Ogus. We're here in Wadley, Georgia. That's where I live. I'm an ag banker as well as a farmer. We got a family farming operation here. We farm around 5,000 acres, of a third being cotton, corn, and peanuts, and we also do beef cow. We had a pretty good cotton crop, we thought, before the storm came. We were a little later planting this year. We didn't get started planting until May the 20th. I think we planted our whole crop in about 12 days. This cotton behind us here was one of the last fields I planted. It was planted June the 2nd. We didn't have any cotton sprayed when the hurricane came through. We had some ready to spray. We feel like what we've harvested so far, we probably lost a third, between 30 and 40% of our cotton was on the ground. And you know, this right here, I don't know, it's laid over bad. I don't know if what's gonna go in the picker and what's gonna open up on the bottom side. We are blessed to be alive, but you know, it's a challenge to look at the crop like this. And we knew going in that we had to make a good crop with the price like it was to break even on our cotton acres. So I know we're probably not going to be there, but you know, hopefully make enough to, you know, make ends meet and go again next year. We went about 2 weeks here without power. Most of our stuff's on 3-phase, so that was the first thing they got back going. I think some guys were, you know, almost 17 days without power. We are back kind of to some normalcy, but you know, we got a long way to go. It'll be years cleaning up. We probably lost 70% of our timber on our farm, mature timber on our farm. That's seems like everybody did, you know, within 70 miles of here. It's going to be tough to overcome this. I mean, I think we will. You know, be positive, and it's easy to look around and be negative, but you know, we're trying to be positive and, you know, thank the Lord we all alive, and you know, he brought the storm, and he'll get us out of the storm. And right here, we had 100+ mile-an-hour winds for 3 hours straight, and that was something we could never prepare for, or you know, never dream that we would go through. Everybody I deal with was affected by this storm. I mean, most of my customers are within 100 miles are right here, and you know, whether they're in the timber business or the row crop business, the gins, you know, everybody was affected. And you know, it's gonna take some time to get through this, and I hope we can get some help, and you know, with some faith and a lot of praying and hopefully some help, we're gonna all get through this.
The Georgia Cotton Commission reporting that to date, Hurricane Helene has caused nearly $351 million in total losses to Georgia's cotton crop. And we do want to remind you that Georgia's top ag organizations, including Georgia Farm Bureau, have joined forces to establish a relief fund aimed at supporting farmers affected by Hurricane Helene. All donations processed through the Georgia Foundation for Agriculture are tax deductible. You can contribute via the QR code on your screen, a secure online donation form, or by check. For more details, visit gfb.org/hurricane relief.
As if the threat of hurricanes wasn't enough to lose sleep over, Georgia cotton producers also face an unexpected and costly threat from an unlikely pest, whitetail deer. For years, farmers have noticed an uptick in damage, but new data confirms the scale of the problem. According to a UGA survey, deer are causing massive yield losses, impacting between 35 to 40% of Georgia's cotton fields, while inflicting up to $152 million in damage across the industry. In a recent conversation with UGA cotton specialist Cam Pan, he shared insights into the scope of this issue and what can be done to help protect one of Georgia's most valuable commodities. Let's dive into the survey insights, if you will. Can you go ahead and explain or expand on the key factors really that contributed to deer surpassing other pests like pigweed and nematodes as Georgia's #1 economic threat to cotton?
Yeah, so we did do the grower survey last winter. So it was earlier this year and even in the fall of 2023. And really the results overwhelmingly stated that growers, consultants, county agents all perceive whitetail deer to be the #1 economic pest of cotton. And And it's kind of wild. I knew it was a problem. I didn't realize it was that big of a problem, I guess, is kind of what it helped me realize. But another thing, in talking with them and in talking with some of the other specialists, that kind of specialize in pest management here on the station, is that with things like pigweeds or nematodes or any other insect pest, for the most part, we've developed really effective management strategies for those pests, and they're pretty economical. And it's something that's pretty easy for growers to put in place. As long as it's done in a timely manner, they can get good control of that pest. And I think that's the one thing that kind of sets the deer thing apart, is we don't have that whenever we start talking about the deer just yet. And so that's kind of the next step, I think, and that we're figuring out how bad it really is, and then moving on to what can we do to manage this problem, and how can we do it in a way that isn't somebody staying up all night.
Yeah, and expanding on that mitigation issue, with whitetail deer populations, they're increasing due to target management programs. You looking, I guess, I don't want to say from the outside in because you're really involved in this, but how would you propose balancing wildlife conservation efforts with the need to protect crops, especially with really no traditional agronomic tools to, manage deer issues?
Yeah, so one thing that we kind of looked into pretty early on was the numbers over the last 20 years of hunters, licensed hunters, and deer harvest over the last 20 years. And really, it's pretty surprising. The number of licensed hunters in the last 20 years has gone down between 30 and 40%. And then the same with deer harvest, right? You reduce the number of hunters, you're reducing the amount of deer that are taking deer in deer season. And so, deer harvest in the last 20 years are down 35 to 40%. There's only a few things that can be done, but at the end of the day, growers can't be the ones responsible for this. It's got to be a collaborative effort. Of course, there is a place for what growers are doing in terms of these depredation permits and repellents and things like that. But at the end of the day, that the hunters and the outdoor sporting industry, we all got to be working on this together. And so we've got to come up with some solutions there in terms of, a lot of guys don't want to deal with it, but if we had some more like Hunter for the Hungry type locations around, maybe we could get some guys on board with, hey, it's going towards a good cause. We're helping out the deer herd. We're helping out the farmers who's around us. I think we can come up with some good constructive solutions working together on something like that.
Yeah, like you said, working together, collaborative effort. And it should be noted, this is not just a Georgia problem. This is a regional problem. They're having issues in Alabama, South Carolina. What about a collaborative effort between the states? How possible would that be?
It's very possible, and it's something we're working on. It's something that I've been in contact with some folks at Cotton Incorporated. We're talking about having a kind of a regional meeting about this, from Alabama up through the Carolinas, in Virginia, trying to get everybody together, because everybody's working on this stuff, but we're not really working together just yet. And so if we can establish some kind of working group and say, all right, this is what we've decided, because we don't need to repeat what everybody else is doing, right? We need to be working together to find a real solution to this type stuff. And so, getting everybody in the same room, kind of hashing out what people have been working on, what's working, what's not, and then potential next steps on what we need to be doing. So that kind of thing is in the works for later this year, the first, January of 2025, to start having these regional type meetings and discussions to start working together, because it's a complicated issue everywhere, but what works in Georgia may not work in South Carolina or North Carolina or Alabama. We're going to have to start piecing stuff together and say, all right, this is going to have to take a multifaceted approach, but here's the things that are working here. You try those there, and maybe we can add that to our arsenal, more or less.
Up next, groundbreaking research at the University of Georgia. The innovative pumpkin that's changing the way farmers grow their crops. finally this week, growing up on a sheep farm in South Africa, Dr. Cecilia McGregor found a love for genetics early on. Now, as a horticulture professor at UGA, she's leading a team that's creating disease-resistant pumpkins and squash. With that in mind, let's hear more about McGregor's journey and her Orange Bulldog pumpkin project.
My job here at UGA is to create new varieties of cucurbits. Cucurbits are watermelon, squash, and pumpkins.
Cecilia McGregor is a professor of horticulture at the University of Georgia.
Yeah, so I'm originally from South Africa. I grew up on a sheep farm in South Africa. And when I went to high school, I had a very good biology teacher.
She says her love of genetics blossomed in her high school biology class.
When I had to go to university, I decided, well, that's what I want to study.
Because she grew up on a farm, she had a passion for animals and spent the majority of her undergraduate program studying animal genetics.
But then after I graduated from my undergraduate degree, I started becoming more interested in plants, and then I started studying plant genetics.
Now she's part of a team that grows these.
So this variety of pumpkin is called Orange Bulldog. Look, it has different shapes. You have this kind of salmon color. You also have the really deep orange color, and they're nice if you want to carve. They are all pollinated by bees. So bees come, they land on one flower and then visit another flower. Also, they have separate male and female flowers. So the bee have to hop on the male flower, get the pollen, then hop on the female flower.
While these round gourds aren't the traditional red and black, they were developed by scientists at the University of Georgia. The Orange Bulldog seed was originally obtained in 1996. The cultivar was then developed in 2004, and the seed became available for growers to purchase about 2 years later.
It took about 10 years to go from starting the project until something is available for farmers, and that's very common because we need to test the plants over and over, make sure if we tell a farmer, well, this is resistant to a virus, it's really resistant to a virus.
And they grow, well, not only in Georgia, but all over the southeast United States. These dogs are good for carving and eating, but the best part is they've been created to be invincible.
And they are resistant to some of the diseases and pests we get in Georgia. So we grow fields like this, we harvest the seed, we process the seed, we clean it and make sure it's all nice and healthy, it has good germination, and then we package it in little packages like this, and then from February until August, the growers can order on a website, just like you kind of do on Amazon. You can order seed and then we ship the seed to you.
It's all in an effort to improve the quality of seeds for farmers and ultimately make sure that our world is adequately fed.
All the research that is done is really done by teams. It's not, I'm just the person who is standing here today. The person that collected the seed was Jared Kruer. The person that really developed the cultivar was Dr. George Boyan, and now I'm taking it over. So research and science in general is built by teams, and one person stands on the shoulders of another. So yeah, it's really honored to be part of this team at UGA that develop this material, and I hope that I can make a small contribution that in the future will help somebody else and their team to carry this forward.
She says there's so many different career paths that involve agriculture.
Anything from a lot of computer work, it can be something that is a lot of lab work, working with pipettes and DNA in the lab. It can be out here in the field evaluating material. So the career in science is huge, and there's opportunities for everybody.
There's a lot of behind the scenes lab work, working with DNA, genetics, and genomics to develop plants like the Orange Bulldog pumpkins that are resistant to disease.
If you are interested in this kind of career path, molecular biology is really what you want to study.
Before we send you on your way, a friendly reminder that for all the latest ag news regarding food, recipes, and what's happening on Georgia farms, be sure you check out all of our social media platforms, including farm-monitor.com.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time right here on the Farm Monitor. Stay safe and have a great week.